Welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Planning Committee meeting this Wednesday, the 15th of April. I am Councillor Neil Sanderson, Chair of the committee. The meeting is being web streamed to the public through the Council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, when asked to speak, please use the push button talk to talk and the microphone in front of you. This will allow the camera to pan in your direction and for everyone to hear you. Could I ask members of the public and councillors to ensure that the mobile devices are either off or mute, so it doesn't interfere with the recording of the meeting. Before we begin formal notices, I'm obliged to read out the following notice. There is no fire drill scheduled for this evening in the building. If a fire alarm sounds, then please I ask you to make your way out of the building, down the main staircase, and meet at the entrance of Caldicott Park. For those of you with disabilities, if you can indicate, we will make sure whether the superintendent or one of our officers assists you to leave the building. Moving on to the agenda, first task tonight will be for me to approve the minutes of the previous meeting on the 11th of February. Members, are you content with those minutes? Okay. Councillor Harrington.
I approve, yeah.
Propose. Councillor Pickett to second. Thank you. Declarations of interest. To receive any declarations for councillors under the Code of Conduct. Under A, non-pecuniary interests. Any member? No? Councillor Gillies.
Just, you've skipped apologies, Chair, but do you want me to do my non-pecuniaries to begin with?
Yeah, go
back to that. The first one is the first one on the determination, R250623, as I believe the site is owned by the church, so I'm going to declare non-pecuniary as a church warden of St Dennis Pailton and a parochial church councillor at the neighbouring parish of St Edith in Monks Kirby. The other non-pecuniary is the next application, R250883, in as that I've done a lot of work at the neighbouring farm of Brookfield Farm, adjacent to the site.
Thank you, Councillor Gillies. Any other comments? Pecuniary interests? No. Notice under Section 106 Local Government Finance Acts, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Thank you, we've all paid. Do we have any apologies for tonight?
We've got apologies from Councillor Russell. Councillor Garcia is substituting for him. We also have apologies from Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you. Welcome, Councillor Garcia. Right, rules for public speaking. Right, in terms of rules for public speaking, we will take them as they appear on the agenda. First item will be R250623, construction of a temporary solar farm. We have a registered objector, Joy Deakin, if you could indicate. Thank you. Registered supporter, Stephen Bainbridge. Thank you. And we have no ward councillor speaking on that one. Item 2 is R250883. It's a solar farm development in Lenton Lane, Alderman's Green. We have a registered speaker, Sheila Cooper. Thank you. And a registered supporter, Gordon Buchan. Thank you. And for item Oh, sorry. And we have Councillor Timms speaking as the ward councillor. And the third item is proposed conversion of a residential property. That's R25 1073. We have a registered objector, Gemma Harrison. Thank you. We have no registered supporter speaking, and we have Councillor Moran speaking as the ward councillor. Right, thank you. Do we have any advance notice of site visit?
We'll do that later.
We'll get on with this. Okay, can we deal with the first application? Dan.
Good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me all right? Great. So the first application on the agenda today is a scheme for the construction of a solar farm on land north of Coal Pit Lane to the west of the village of Willey. Development would include the installation of solar panels, substations, inverters, perimeter fencing, associated development, as well as landscaping works to the access on Coal Pit Lane, and biodiversity improvements. Just bear with me a second. Why can I not access that? Thank you. Sorry about that, members. Before I start the presentation proper, I should just draw members' attention to the agenda update sheet, which I hope you've all received. As members will be aware, when the report was drafted, there was an outstanding holding objection in place from National Gas Transmission in respect of a gas main across the site. National Gas has since removed that objection based on amended technical drawings and subject to the application of an additional condition. In addition, as the amendment was to the access of the site, the local highways authority has been consulted and has confirmed it is content with the changes. On that basis, and subject to the additional and amended conditions on the update sheet, officers are no longer requesting delegated powers to approve the application, but rather that committee vote to approve the application this evening. So moving on then, the plan on screen there shows the proposed site, which is approximately 23 hectares outlined in red, with the village of Willey to the east. On the right-hand side of the picture, Coal Pit Lane itself runs alongside the tree belt you can see in green to the south of the application site. To give members some idea of the site and its immediate surroundings, I've included some photos of the site. This slide shows the entrance to the site from Coal Pit Lane to the south, and then views east along Coal Pit Lane from the access point and west in the other direction. This slide shows a view of the site from that access point, looking into the site, looking north, and a similar view looking back towards the road from towards the south. This slide shows the site from the eastern corner, that front field of the site there, and then looking back again along that tree belt which runs through the centre of the site. You can see that on the right-hand side of the photo. And then across the field in the centre of the site towards Norwood Farm, sort of in the middle distance there. Moving further into the site along the back of the site, the northern boundary, members might just want to note something of a change in land levels there, sloping down to the north and northwest. And then looking back along the western boundary from the rear of the site. Photo shows a similar view, just including Norwood Farm to the west. And then taken from slightly further down that boundary, a bit of a better view of Norwood Farm. And then finally, as far as site photos go, just that similar view from the front of the site, the access point there looking into and across those fields on the front of the site. So turning to the proposed development, the site plan on the right-hand side of the slide there shows the proposed layout. The access is taken from Coal Pit Lane to the south, as indicated by the orange triangle on the zoomed-in plan on the left. The panels are shown in blue, and they're set in from the perimeter and from internal field boundaries, retaining the existing framework of fields. You can also see diagonal gaps in the front 3 fields, which reflect the easements for the gas pipeline and overhead electricity cables. The coloured shapes towards the site access there are the proposed substation cabins, and the black dots on the plan are the transformer stations that are located throughout the site. And the perimeter fencing is shown in the brown line around the field boundaries there. So a view of the panels, fairly standard stuff, about 2.5 metres at their highest point above ground level, sloping down to about 600 mil above ground on the front edge. And then just some detailed views of the ancillary structures. So you've got the substation cabins there, transformer stations, and then a section of the proposed deer fencing, which is 2 metres high and a sort of weld mesh type fence. And then one of the updated technical drawings for the access, just really showing the access arrangements at the front of the site, as well as the gas main that crosses the site in purple there. And finally, on the plans, the proposed landscaping scheme, you can see existing trees and tree belts, hedgerows that would be retained, as well as additional scrub planting around the perimeter, additional hedge and tree planting, and some of the drainage gullies that would be implemented on site. So moving on to the key planning considerations, I won't run through them all off that slide, but you can see them up there. So turning first to the principle of the development, the need for renewable energy is laid out in the National Planning Policy Framework, which states that the planning system should support the transition to net zero by 2050 and should help contribute to radical reductions in carbon emissions, including by supporting renewable energy infrastructure. It also makes clear that decision makers should give significant weight to the benefits of renewable energy generation. At a local level, Rugby Borough Council declared a climate emergency in 2019, and its climate strategy identifies the need to increase green energy production. This scheme would provide approximately 16 megawatts of renewable energy generation, a meaningful contribution towards the Council's climate change priorities. Significant positive weight is therefore attributed to that benefit, and that will be weighed in the planning balance that I'll come on to at the end. So the site is located in the West Midlands Greenbelt. The NPPF provides for 2 situations where permission can be granted in the Greenbelt. The first is where the land meets the definition of grey belt, and the second is where very special circumstances exist which outweigh any harm to the Greenbelt. Where the site meets the definition of grey belt, very special circumstances are not required, but the development is required to meet other tests. A detailed Greenbelt assessment process is set out in detail in the committee report, but in summary, where sites do not contribute strongly to Greenbelt purposes A, B or D, which you can see on the slide there, they can be considered grey belt. The conclusion of our assessment is that the site does not contribute strongly to the relevant purposes and therefore meets the definition of grey belt. As the site is grey belt in the context of this development, an assessment has been made as to whether it meets the other tests, which you can see in bullet points 2, 3 and 4 on the slide. The development would not fundamentally undermine the purposes of the remaining green belt. There is acknowledged need for solar energy nationally, as evidenced by several recent appeal decisions, and the development is in a sustainable location relative to its nature. On that basis, the proposals accord with the requirements of the NPPF in respect of it being grey belt and meeting the other tests necessary to allow development on grey belt land. It is therefore acceptable in terms of national and local green belt policy. Turning to the other land use issues, in terms of agricultural land use, the land quality assessment submitted with the application concludes that the site is grade 3B land. This is not best and most versatile land, and on that basis, the development would not result in the loss of BMV. The application proposes that the site would continue to be grazed during its 40-year operational phase, meaning that there would be no significant loss of agricultural use during that period in any case. In addition, the land would revert to agricultural use at the end of the 40-year period. The site is also located in a minerals safeguarding area for sand and gravel, which is identified in the Warwickshire Minerals Plan. Policies within that plan seek to avoid the sterilisation of minerals resource. However, as the development is temporary, the policies in that plan accept it would not sterilise a site for minerals extraction, and there's therefore no conflict with the requirements of the minerals plan. Turning to landscape and visual impact, the proposed development would evidently result in a change of character to the site, which is currently open pastoral fields and would be replaced with a solar farm. The application was accompanied by a landscape visual appraisal, which considers the effects on the landscape as well as the visual effects. It judges that the landscape effects would be moderate to minor adverse on completion of the development, lessening over time as the additional landscape planting matures. It also assesses the visual effects on receptors, including road users on Coalpit Lane, walkers on public footpaths, and occupants of residential properties. The views most affected would be from Coalpit Lane and from the footpath and farm immediately to the west. The impact on those views is judged to be moderate to minor adverse on completion, falling to minor adverse as landscaping matures. The impacts on other views, including from footpaths to the north and east, are low level of minor adverse at worst. There are a number of existing mature trees on site and hedgerows, and they would largely be retained. Just the removal of 4 relatively minor trees and additional supplementary tree, hedge and scrub planting is proposed, which would mitigate some of the landscape and visual effects over time. The retention of the trees, the proposed planting, and the management of the soft landscaping on site would be secured by conditions. The harm caused in respect of the impact of the development on the immediate landscape and visual receptors is weighed in the planning balance. The design and appearance of the development is typical for a solar farm, with large expanses of uniform panel arrays and isolated low-level ancillary structures. As I said before, the panels have been laid out within existing field boundaries and set in from their edges, meaning the pattern of fields will be retained. The panels and the associated structures are low-lying and will benefit from existing perimeter screening and supplementary planting, and the screening would soften the overall appearance over time. As I've already said, the development will be removed from the site at the end of the 40-year permission, and a condition requiring a scheme of reinstatement of the land would be applied to any permission. The design of the scheme is therefore considered to be acceptable. The site is not within or close to any designated biodiversity sites, and ecological surveys have demonstrated that there would not be any harm caused to protected species. The scheme proposes on-site biodiversity enhancements, which are primarily achieved through the additional landscape planting of hedgerows and trees and native scrub, as well as more diverse meadow grassland across the site. This would result in a net gain to biodiversity well in excess of the mandatory 10% gain, and the retention of hedgerows and supplementary planting would also ensure linkages across the site into the wider green infrastructure network. Subject to conditions and a Section 106 obligation to secure BNG monitoring contributions, the county ecologist is content with the impact of the proposed development. In terms of the historic environment, there are 2 listed buildings in Willey, and to the south of the site is Newham Paddocks Registered Park and Garden, which also contains several listed buildings. Due to the distance between the site and intervening landscaping, the site does not contribute to the setting of the park or of any of the listed buildings. In respect of archaeology, the county archaeologist is content that the impact on archaeology would be acceptable, subject to a condition requiring a pre-development scheme of archaeological investigation. The main transport impacts of the development would be related to the construction phase, where an average of 8 two-way HGV movements per day would occur over approximately a 12-week period. The HGVs would access the site via the A5 and then the eastern portion of Coalpit Lane and would leave in the same direction. That arrangement would be secured as part of the construction traffic management plan required by condition, and on that basis the local highways authority is content that transport impacts of construction and then ultimately decommissioning when it occurs are acceptable. The day-to-day transport impacts over the 40-year operational phase are extremely low and would have no impact on highway safety. The road safety audit and amended access arrangements for the site have been considered by the local highways authority, which is content that they are acceptable to ensure no adverse impacts on highway safety. And that will be subject to conditions requiring detailed layouts, provision of access and turning, and the visibility displays at the point of access. The local highways authority has also confirmed its content that the impact of glint and glare from the sun reflecting off panels, which has been identified as potentially affecting a 450-metre stretch of Coalpit Lane, can be acceptably mitigated by supplementary hedge planting, as well as an increase in the overall height that the hedges are maintained to. And on that basis, the proposed development is acceptable in terms of its impact on traffic and highway safety. The impact of the development on residential properties in the locality has been considered. Primary potential impacts are from glare from the sun's reflection off the panels, and from noise and dust during construction, and noise and lighting during operation. In respect of glare, the glint and glare assessment identified 7 dwellings where glare would be possible for less than an hour a day for approximately half of the year. For 6 of the properties, the combination of their distance from the site and intervening screening means the impact of glare would be low. For the remaining dwelling, which is Norwood Farm to the west, the impact would not be mitigated to such an extent as the site is in closer proximity. And there are also land level changes which impact on the ability of some of the existing hedging to screen glare. The assessment finds that that property would suffer a moderate impact from glare, and that would potentially cause some harm to the amenity of residents. And again, that harm will be weighed in the planning balance. In respect to the impacts of construction, noise and dust, the Council's EHO is content that the risks to neighbouring amenity can be adequately managed via a construction environmental management plan, which we've proposed to secure by condition. In respect of operational noise, the EHO is content that the distance between the site and neighbours is such that operational noise from transformers and substations and the like would not impact on neighbouring amenity. Members will note that we've proposed to restrict lighting by condition, meaning that no lighting would be able to be installed without further consideration by the Council. And these arrangements are considered sufficient to protect neighbours from the impacts of noise, dust and artificial light nuisance. In terms of flood risk and drainage, the site's within flood zone 1, which means it's at the lowest risk of fluvial flooding. It's also generally at very low risk of surface water flooding, with just some small isolated areas at risk of pooling. The application proposes to introduce new interception swales at points along the western side of the site, where the site slopes down towards the ditch on the western boundary, and the lead local flood authority has no objection on the basis of increased flood risk, and that's providing a detailed drainage scheme is secured by condition. Just turning to other matters then, the application was accompanied by a health impact screening, which didn't raise any concerns in respect of impacts of the development on health. In respect to the gas pipeline, as I said earlier at the start of the presentation, that objection has now been overcome, subject to condition. Some public representations have raised concern in respect of private easements along the western boundary of the site and the potential impacts they might have on the proposed landscaping biodiversity. The applicant maintains that there are no such easements in place. and in any event, those easements would be a civil matter which should not prevent the issuing of a planning permission. Concern has been expressed in local responses regarding the lack of information provided about the grid connection point for the solar farm. The applicant states it has secured a grid connection and that the connection of the site would be carried out under permitted development rights, which are granted to statutory undertakers. Where permitted development rights would not apply to any or all of a connection, a permission would be required, which would then be considered on its merits. While concern regarding potential disruption from off-site works to connect the development to the grid are acknowledged, many forms of development result in the need for highways works, and it is up to the Highways Authority and statutory undertakers to put in place arrangements to mitigate disruption. It is not considered that the relative lack of information on the grid connection is a reason to withhold permission. Finally, concern has been raised in local representations, both in respect of a perceived proliferation of solar farms in the area, and that the roofs of large warehouse buildings should be used for solar development as an alternative to greenfield sites. The landscape impacts of the development have been assessed, and it's not considered that there are any other solar farms in the locality which would result in harm via cumulative visual or landscape impact. The plan you can see on screen there is just an indicative plan showing the other permitted solar farms as yellow dots and the application site as a red dot. And they are relatively spatially distinct and totally visually distinct from the application site. In respect to the suggestion that warehouse roofs should be used as an alternative, many warehouse roofs in the borough are used for solar panels, but in any event, the use of warehouse roofs is not sufficient to meet the need for renewable energy. So turning to the planning balance, the adverse impacts of the scheme are harm to the immediate landscape and visual receptors, and potential harm to the amenity of one residential property. In both cases, that harm is given moderate weight. The primary benefit of the scheme is the provision of renewable energy over a 40-year period. Given the national and local priority for the delivery of green energy, this is given significant weight in the planning balance. The development would also bring about some economic benefits during construction, which is given limited weight, and significant biodiversity net gain over and above the mandatory level, which is given moderate weight. In balancing the adverse impacts and benefits, the significant weight given to the production of renewable energy outweighs the adverse landscape and residential amenity impacts, and on that basis, the application should be approved. The recommendation before committee today is therefore the approval of the application subject to conditions, informatives, and the completion of the 106 agreement, and that the strategic director for place be given delegated authority to make minor amendments to conditions, informatives, and the legal agreement. And I'm happy to answer any questions members may have. Thanks.
Yes, Councillor Gillis.
As a matter of interest, the site photographs, at what time of the year were they taken?
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Gillis, for the question. They were taken about, I went back to site about 2 weeks ago, and that's when I took those photographs.
The other question is, and I sent you an email regarding a Google Earth photo of the additional sites. I don't think the yellow dot is representative of the sites elsewhere in the locality. It doesn't give us the scale of what they look like and the cumulative impact. So is there any way that we could, because I like to think that the people making the decision are given the evidence to look at.
Yeah, again, thank you for your request to do that. I did initially try to do that on Google Earth Photos. It just didn't show up very well. And that's why I switched to something which was a little bit more stylised, because I thought it might show a bit more clearly the location of those solar farms relative to the site. As I said during the presentation, the site is visually distinct from those sites, and the potential for any cumulative impact on the landscape has been considered. So I felt that the more stylised diagram was the best way to show their general location.
Just one more question. This is a technical.
The speaker's waiting, Tony.
It's important.
No, can you wait?
It's important, and that is.
No, Tony. You've got to give other speakers the opportunity. Are there any further technical questions? Councillor Freeman.
Yes, could you just indicate on the map where Norwood Farm is, because you said that was the one. Do you want me to repeat the question? I'll repeat it for the people at home. Can you indicate on the map where Norwood Farm is, because that's the one property which is identified as being adversely impacted?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, the plan that's on screen there, the farm is set back from the road just to the west of the application site. So that collection of I don't know if my cursor will show up on screen. It's not. Bear with me a second. It's there. So you've got as I understand it, the farm buildings here on this side, and then the farmhouse itself is set at the end of those on the western side of that little cluster of buildings. And it's, I think, about 150 metres to the west of the sort of nearest boundary of the site.
Councillor Simpson-Vince.
Thank you, Chair. You talked in the presentation about a deer fence. Is that going round the whole site? And you don't have to see me, it's fine. I'm fine. I'm fine with it just being a graphic up there. And it talks about the fields can still be used for sheep grazing. So how high are the deer fences, and what happens to the other wildlife that's in the field when the 5 fields when those are put up, and what is their exit and entrance into the field? Because with the best will in the world, you can put the deer fencing up, but you're going to have quite a lot of rabbits, squirrels, and goodness knows what else in there. So just curious how that's going to work.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, the fencing would primarily be to keep sheep in and keep deer out. There are measures that can be put in place with that fencing which will allow other animals to transit through the site, both in and out, and that's something that we could certainly look to get as part of the detail of the proposals which we've conditioned.
Is this a technical question?
Thank you. When you're saying Culpet Lane is going to be used for the lorries, what surveys has been done on that? Because if there's going to be extra traffic and heavier vehicle loads on there, if any degradation happens, who's going to be liable for it? Because we know Warwickshire County Council haven't got that money. So will it be the people actually doing the actual development? So has that been done or looked at? Because that will be probably a concern of people.
That isn't something that the LHA has flagged up as far as a condition survey, and it's not something that we're looking to condition at present. It is condition surveys on a stretch of road that long are somewhat problematic because there's obviously regular use of those roads as well. The level of traffic using the road was not something that concerned the LHA, but the provision for a condition survey is not something that's requested, no.
Councillor Picker.
Right, I've got a couple of questions here. So the first one is going back to the amenity harm to one of the properties, which is defined as moderate. Could we be a bit more clear on what moderate harm means? Is it that the simulation shows that some light will be hitting the property boundary, or are we talking about a significant glare into someone's, say, front window or bedroom window? Because that's quite a big difference. Secondly, paragraph 19.5, the heads of terms, we've got a £42,935 payment to Rugby Borough Council for the habitat monitoring fee, which seems reasonably self-explanatory. We've then got a monitoring contribution of £622.80 for the implementation of and compliance with the legal agreement. Can you just give us a bit more clarity over what that money's actually for? Because that doesn't seem like an awful lot for monitoring a legal agreement to me. And then finally, you talked about the grid connection being indeterminate at the moment, but that wasn't necessarily a reason to refuse permission. Obviously, the grid connection is quite significant for the use of the site. So is there some precedent that we can call upon in looking at that decision? Because obviously granting planning permission for something that then can't be connected to the grid does seem unusual to me.
Thank you, Councillor Pick, for the questions. Taking your points in order, the glint and glare assessment that was done does go into quite extensive detail about the modelling that's used and how it reaches the judgment whether the harm would be low or moderate. I didn't get into too much sort of technical detail. The glare that onto that property that is shown in the glint and glare assessment occurs between late March to late September from recollection, and it occurs for, as I said, less than an hour. I think it's actually modelled as being quite significantly less than an hour, and it's just after dawn, so it varies slightly during the year. But it's approximately an hour after dawn, for a period of, I think, approximately 20 minutes. That's what's modelled, and on that basis, that assessment judges that is a moderate impact. I don't think the modelling accounts for all of the other buildings on site. But it does judge that some glare will reach that property at those times. Now, the extent to which that is harmful is obviously then a matter of judgment beyond that. And we've come to the view that we ought to attribute sort of moderate weight to that harm.
Thank you.
Shall I go on to your question about the Section 106 agreement? Yeah, so the second fee, the lower fee that you talked about, is to cover the council's costs in monitoring that agreement. It's a standard fee, and in this case, the obligation itself, as far as the payment of those monies, is relatively limited. So yes, I think it would cover that. And on the grid connection, as far as precedent goes, this council has dealt with the grid connection in a number of ways. I've looked back over previous permissions. Sometimes the grid connection is included within the application itself. It'll be in the red line of the site. Sometimes it isn't included at all, as was the case here. And then in some of those circumstances, a later application is made for the grid connection where that requires planning permission, i.e. where it can't be done under permitted development rights by statutory undertakers. So not unusual, as a variety of kind of approaches have been taken to that.
Let's turn to our speakers now. Can I first have... Go on then.
Thank you. I just wondered if you had approached Magna Park about this application and what they responded with having the solar panels on their roofs.
In short, no, we haven't approached Magna Park about that.
Could I ask why not, given that it's a stone's throw away from the site?
I think, firstly, as planning officers, we have to assess the application that's in front of us. It's a different quantum of solar development than would be could be accommodated on those roofs. Some of those roofs do have. I did look into this question because it's something that Councillor Gillias asked. Almost all of the roofs there, particularly on the newer buildings, are solar PV ready, and some of them are proposed to have solar on them, and in some cases that will be done speculatively, but in most cases it will come forward as a result of the occupier that takes it on. But the question of accommodating solar generally on the roofs of buildings, there simply is not capacity on the nation's roofs to provide the level of solar energy that's required, and therefore we are in a position where we need to consider other sites, brownfield sites and greenfield sites. So that wasn't something that we specifically spoke to Magna Park about, and I don't think it would be appropriate within this application to have done that.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you for that. Could I just finish?
Is this
Anderson. It's just for my ignorance, because on those plans that you've shown of the solar park, I mean, it looks massive when you see it like that on a map. But how do I put that into any context? How big is it? Is it the size of a football pitch, half a football pitch, 4 football pitches?
The size of this site, the 23 hectares, I'm going to struggle to convert that to football pitches in my head quickly. If you can leave it with me, what? Without checking, I can't comment on how many football pitches it is. I'm happy to try and do that calculation whilst we have other speakers, and I can come back to you on that.
okay? Can I ask Joy Deakin to make a presentation? Basically, you're limited on the time that you're allowed to speak. When the buzzer goes off, you must bring your comments to an end.
Sorry, Councillor, can I just interject here? Don't they get 30 seconds when the buzzer sounds? Yeah, half a minute.
Then a further alarm will then expire, will basically knock out the microphone, so you won't be able to make any further comments. Okay?
Hello, Joy Deakin. I've always lived in the Wibtoft Willey area all my life. The proposed site lies in Greybelt and in my view should not be redesignated as Greybelt. It covers 57 acres of elevated rolling countryside. The same tenant farmers have farmed this land for over 70 years. There are rich, lush pastures grazed by sheep and flowering hay meadows. Wildlife is free to roam wherever. Hay meadows are perfect hunting grounds for red kites, buzzards and owls. The site supports rich biodiversity and a thriving ecosystem. Whereas nothing much grows under solar panels, it is shaded and desert-like. I would argue that the soil assessment of Class 3B could easily be upgraded to 3A by improved drainage and better soil management. This would uplift the classification to best and most versatile agricultural land, taking it outside the remit for development, and this land capable of growing potatoes and crops as neighbouring land does. Contrary to what we are led to believe about sheep grazing, solar ground, there is ongoing debate as to health and welfare of sheep on solar sites. Surely this fertile farmland should not be desecrated by solar panels and become an ugly, fenced-off, even prison-like development watched over by CCTV cameras. My next point relates to the impact on Norwood Farm, which adjoins the proposed site on its entire western boundary. As stated in the application, Norwood Farm would be impacted by glint and glare of the solar panels for much of the year. For farmers, early dawn, they are up and about and working and would be affected. To the occupants of Norwood Farm, this is more than a moderate impact. The panels cannot be effectively screened because the land slopes and overlooks the farm. Flooding is another issue where neighbouring fields and further down the Soar Brook are exposed to flooding from excess runoff from panels. There is also the question of archaeological trenching. Initially, in the Warwickshire County Council report, they said it should be done, but the trenching, in fact, hasn't been done. I wondered what had happened. My final point is that this would set a precedent for more random areas in the Greenbelt to be developed and more agricultural land lost and more open countryside lost.
No, I don't feel I need to respond at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Stephen Bainbridge, again, same rules apply. 3 minutes and 30-second warning.
Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. I'm Stephen Bainbridge from Enviromina. I'm a qualified planner, like your planning officers are. Conscious of time, and we have another bigger solar farm coming after this one, so I'll focus on the matters that will help you: grey belt, local objections, and the planning balance. Government introduced grey belt in July 24. So why is this site grey belt? I don't know whether you've read our submissions on it, so I'll summarise. The NPPF sets 2 stages of assessment. The first stage requires decision makers to assess whether the development site strongly affects sprawl, towns merging and historic towns. Solar farms are not sprawl from large built-up areas. This development will not cause 2 towns to merge, and there are no historic towns in the area. The second stage says that the development should not undermine all of the rest of the green belt in Rugby. Well, it's too small to do that. Also, there is a need for the type of development, which there is both locally and nationally. So in summary, our site is grey belt in the green belt. In terms of public comments, you may have seen our responses on these. Picking out some of the matters that may be of interest to you. The site is not prime farmland, it is all grade 3B. The Glint and Glare report concludes only a worst case moderate impact on 1 dwelling for which mitigation is recommended. The grid issue, the grid connection is 1 mile south on Lutterworth Road, if you need to know. It's not part of the application because it doesn't need to be, but there you go, there's the answer to that one. There's the roofs versus land argument, that one always comes up. However, the evidence is clear that using rooftops is nowhere near enough compared to what the country's power needs are. Whilst lots of people worry about solar taking over, even on the most optimistic projections, ground-mounted solar will take up less land in the country than golf courses. Your committee report mentions economic development. There's some big figures in our assessment, including the £14.3 million of gross value added to the Rugby economy. The NPPF says you should be giving significant weight to that. Your officers and I agree that this scheme complies with the local plan. In terms of the planning balance, on the cons side, you've got a bit of landscape harm, a bit of heritage harm, and a bit of amenity impact. On the plus side, we've got providing green energy, helping energy security, the climate emergency, good low carbon design, reducing air pollution, big biodiversity gains, a lot of economic development, efficient use of land, and farm diversification. So in conclusion, please support your officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to any of those points? We'll move over to debates. Somebody want to start?
Could I
Councillor Garcia.
Could I just ask the lady that spoke brought up about the fact that the archaeological survey wasn't done prior to submission? Is that correct? And if so, why wasn't it done? Because I thought you had to have that done on everything.
Thank you, Councillor Garcia. The application was submitted with a heritage desk-based assessment, which included some work on archaeology. The county archaeologist felt it was slightly light in terms of information and requested that additional work be done. The applicant then went away and did some geophysical work, which was included within an updated heritage desk assessment, and the county archaeologist is content that that is sufficient to allow the development to be granted permission, subject to a condition requiring a written scheme of investigation, which will then specify any further archaeological investigation that is necessary ahead of development, which would then also kind of be assessed, reported on, assessed, and then published. So there will still be archaeological work that is done prior to development. The first part of that is submitting a written scheme of investigation, which the county archaeologist will consider and decide whether the proposed investigations are sufficient. And once there is agreement that what's proposed is sufficient, those works will, or that investigation will go ahead prior to development.
Now, Chair, there's a few points to raise here.
Well, if you could just keep to the debate, it would be helpful.
Is your microphone on? Yes,
Yeah, it's on. It's on. Yeah, but there's they're all in relation to this development, and they're all what the councillors should know.
Sorry, to be honest.
It's on.
It's on.
It's on.
Oh, it's the way he's got it, is it?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So I'm staggered that the officer hadn't spoken to anybody at Magna Park. Absolutely staggered. Because the area of the warehouse roofs there's 51 warehouses at Magna Park. Just the area of the roofs of a third of those would cover the site that this application is being proposed for. A site that was had protection from the Field Enclosure Act of 1761. Hedgerows are still there from that time, 260 years. If you drive past that site now, you would see wildflowers that the likes of you've never seen before. Only this morning on BBC television, they were talking about retaining this type of habitat because of the loss of butterflies, would you believe? And this is important because once it's gone forever. If you think grass grows under PV panels, you'll be very much mistaken. There won't be anything grow under them, nothing at all. And that habitat will be lost forever. Feedback from Magna Park only today told me that they've only been able to put PV panels on 3 warehouse roofs because they can't connect to the grid. And if they were to connect to the grid, most of those warehouses would have PV panels, totally mitigating the need to put these things into our green belt, now designated grey belt. So for those 2 reasons only, and I could give a list more, I'm going to propose refusal for that. We've got to work, we can't work in silos. Only on Monday, a report came out to say 5 organisations never spoke to one another. Hence 3 children were killed by a murderer that should have been apprehended. That is, no, if you're working in silos, not talking to neighbouring authorities, you must do that.
Must stick to
we
the item
are
in front of
duty bound to work with neighbouring authorities.
You must not go off into a tangent talking about other matters not on this agenda. Can you carry on the environmental side?
On which question, sorry?
We need clarity on the...
Environmental.
Sorry for the delay, Councillor Gillies. As far as me approaching Magna Park to see if solar development can be accommodated on their roofs instead, unfortunately that is just not how the planning system works. When an application is made, planning officers determine the application that's in front of them. I think you yourself raised potential issues with the location of solar panels on roofs, in as much as grid connections may be an issue there. As I said in answer to the question initially, when Councillor Garcia asked it, there is potential for location of solar on those roofs. In most cases, it will be up to the ultimate occupier to install that. Around our borough, many of the roofs of warehouse buildings are used for solar, and that is sometimes a requirement of planning permissions. More often than not, it's because owners want to achieve a high level BREEAM rating. But it just, the planning system just doesn't work that way, that I can go out and tout Magna Park for whether they can accommodate all of this solar on their roof. And as I said during the presentation, even if there's some solar, or even if all of the roofs on Magna Park accommodated solar panels, it simply still wouldn't be enough to address the need for renewable energy in this country. So it's not an either or situation. It's going to be a both and situation, I think.
Thank you for that.
I just don't agree with you,
no.
and I think you're feeding wrong information to people. That's not correct. Sorry.
Could you just clarify on what information you think is incorrect?
We work with Magna Park. We try to mitigate for all the traffic and HGV flows. You're only one step away from mitigating against energy production. You've got to work with neighbouring authorities. You've got to think of ways of how you're going to produce it without wrecking your countryside. This is what it's all about. This is what we're here for. This is what I've been elected by my electorate for, to make these comments. And that's why you're not doing it.
Understood. I don't think there's anything incorrect in what I've told you. I've explained the situation, what planning officers have to consider where applications are made. So I think we probably just need to agree to disagree on that point.
Can I just remind Councillor Gillies, if he's moving for a refusal, we would need clarity on the reasons for refusal and what policies you're referring to, if that is your intention.
What loss of habitat and the impact on the green belt, and of course it's no special circumstances exist, because I've given you the alternative of Magna Park. That was from the horse's mouth of the site manager.
Include that it wasn't great, but
yeah,
you would need.
Okay, now we'll move on. Councillor Freeman, do you want to?
In this committee get trapped into this loop of only everything was different, we come to a different conclusion. I mean, the officers have produced a pretty good report. A number of the concerns expressed by the speakers are addressed in the reports: biodiversity, glare and so on. And the council itself, I think it was 2019, declared a climate emergency, which means we are obliged to consider these things because there is a need to provide more renewable energy. I'm sure there's many objections could be made to any site, but the officers have gone through the process. The applicant has made the appropriate reports. We've had no significant objections from statutory authorities, and a lot of the concerns that have been expressed at this meeting have been dealt with. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to move for... Sorry, I've just lost my thread there. I'm moving to the recommendation be accepted.
Councillor Garcia.
Oh, thank you. Well, I don't actually have any objection to solar panels, apart from on this site, actually. It is the most beautiful part of the countryside. I can't see how it can't be recognised as Greenbelt. It is beyond ridiculous to say that's not going 30 football pitches of solar panels isn't going to have an impact on the landscape. Of course it is. And 40 years, in my opinion, is not temporary. That's permanent, where you can't use that land then for grazing your sheep because it has an impact on the sheep and we won't get any food production from it. So I just absolutely cannot agree with that at all. Also, the road really concerns me. It's a direct route from Magna Park straight through to Wolvie and the motorway connections. It is constantly having accidents. We've had to put in extra mitigating things on the junctions for Monks Kirby and for the Fossway. Because of that, there's constantly things. I think there was 6 deaths over 1 year on that road, and you've said nothing at all about that, and you're actually adding to the traffic. It just doesn't make sense to me at all. I mean, the glare on properties is not good. And the other thing that, for me, absolutely beggars belief is how come there's no grid connection? How can we be asked to go for something where we haven't got the full information in front of us and showing us where the grid connection's going? So for those points, I am going to second refusal.
Right, Councillor Simpson-Vince.
It was an interesting point made by one of the speakers about comparing these sites with golf courses. There's a bit of a visual difference. If you drive up and down the Fossway, which I do quite a lot, there are parts of the Fossway where you look across and you don't see fields of green, you see fields of metal and silver material bouncing back at you. The big solar panel sites do have a big impact visually. And this is a big site. And, you know, we now have this grey belt policy, so conveniently it can go in on grey belt and special circumstances aren't quite as valid. I agree with Councillor Garcia, it's just in the wrong place. It's just in the middle of green, you're going to have this sort of big 5-field area of metal and steel for 40 years, which I agree is not temporary. Yeah, I think it's just too much in that site. So I would be voting against.
I have a proposal. Do we have a second of...
Second for refusal.
We have a second and... we have a proposal for refusal and one for seconding. We have a proposal for the report as printed. Does that have a seconder?
I'll second.
That's right, sir.
So we're ready to move to the vote. Check with Jennifer, but I believe we take refusal first.
Just wanted to say that the speaker earlier spoke really powerfully. Thank you for what you said regarding the thriving ecosystem. And I suppose my one concern is regarding like these buzzards and red kites. What mitigations are there to make sure that they're protected and they can still thrive there?
The ecological appraisal that was submitted with the application did not find that the proposed development would be harmful to protected species. There are no sort of, in terms of the desk-based assessment, no records came back for protected species, and it wasn't considered that the development of the site would have any impact on protected species, and that is something that the county ecologist is supportive of. So from that point of view, no mitigation would be, in terms of that particular impact, no mitigation would be proposed.
If there are no further speakers, we'll move to the vote. Those...
Can I have clarity, because Councillor Garcia had extra reasons.
Yeah. We need to have some clarity on the grounds for refusal, because Councillor Gilliard said one thing and Councillor Garcia added to that.
The habitat is key, simply because that field has had no artificial fertiliser on it for the best part of 70 years. And that habitat is just what the ecologists are looking for. They're looking to retain that. Now, if you had some photographs on that screen of a site that's been there...
Councillor Gillies, can you give us the ground, the essence of your reason for your refusal? We've done the long questions.
Do you want to add one? Well, it's, the other one is obviously the green belt. It's an impact on the green belt. No special circumstances exist.
Yeah. Councillor Gillies, just to be clear, obviously the officer report and obviously the evidence base that we're basing on classifies land as grey belt. So in those circumstances, you don't need very special circumstances. Obviously, it's members...
All right, well, we'll just stick with the habitat, the loss of habitat. Because that was flagged up on BBC TV this morning. This type of habitat is absolutely crucial.
Okay, just for clarity then, what I've got noted here then, if we're disregarding Greenbelt, was obviously loss of habitat you mentioned. You also, Councillor Garcia also mentioned visual impact. There was then some further discussion about loss of food production and further impact, obviously about impact on the road network. Obviously, we've had many discussions about where the Highway Authority has had no objection, and if we have no technical evidence to justify going against them, then obviously that would could potentially expose the council. So obviously I would always caution against any going against the Highway Authority on such things.
Okay.
And obviously there was insufficient information about the connection to the grid, but obviously we've obviously discussed that we don't consider that to be a reason for refusal. So obviously in light of that, then greater clarification will be appreciated.
The other thing, just
and visual impact. Right, we now have a ground. Those in favour of the you can't keep fighting when you should go along.
Well, this is vital, isn't it? And I know I'm not having a go at you, Mr. Holt, because you know what high regard I hold you in. But on that stretch of road, I rang the highways and said we need something going up because there's always accidents. Do you know what they said to me? We've not had enough fatalities yet. Do you know what? I hope it's not their kid. I really do.
But that's an argument.
That's what I mean. These things.
I'm sorry, Councillor Garcia. That's an argument with Warwickshire County Council.
Of course.
They're not determining this application.
We know the area. We know the area. And if we don't shout about it, nobody else will they? That's what we're here for. So that's why I'm getting het up. Not with you, Councillor Sanderson, because I'd never get het up.
We are very much trying to stick to the application in front of us, not things that we don't have in front of us.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for your patience.
Obviously, for the rest of the committee, it's just I'm wanting clarity on exactly what is the proposal for refusal, so members are clear on what they're voting for and whether or not, that succeeds or not. That's all I'm seeking.
Okay.
So yeah, I appreciate your comments, obviously what you've mentioned about the Highway Authority. Obviously you've heard my side of it, we've had that discussion many times at committee. You could also put that to the wildlife side as well, because obviously our ecology experts from the County Council are of the view that the scheme is acceptable. But obviously, I appreciate, members, can obviously offer an alternative opinion to that. But obviously, it is obviously would really need to be evidence-based. So at the moment...
So mine would be then an adverse impact on the landscape as 30 football pitches of solar panels will definitely make an impact. Oh, wasn't that in planning terms?
So just for clarity, I don't know if Councillor Gillis is agreeing with this or not, but you're saying your main concern is the adverse impact on the location, the landscape.
Landscape.
Okay.
Councillor Picker, thank you for your patience.
I was going to say, I think we're looking at any one and any three of the extant local plan, if that helps. I think we're looking at any one and any three of the extant local plan, from my interpretation.
Thank you, Councillor Picker. Any one and any three?
Get on with the vote now. Those in favour of the reasons for refusal, please show.
Yeah, if you could have had that motion first.
So we have 4 members. Those against? So that reason for refusal is lost. Those...
Is it abstention?
And 1 abstention.
Now we need to vote for
the substantive. No, we will have a vote for the substantive recommendation as noted. All those in favour of the substantive recommendation as it appears in the report with the addendum. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried.
Can we have the numbers? Can we have the numbers recorded, please, for the recording? Those for and those against.
He's asking for a recorded vote. So.
You need 3 members to stand up, don't you, for that?
Well, no need to say that. Charlotte used to do it.
Yeah. There we go.
I can do.
That's better. Right, there's been a call for a recorded vote. So what we will now do is record the intentions of the members who've...
Just the numbers, that's fine. Yeah, it was just the numbers, Chair.
You just want the numbers? So there were 3 against and 1 abstention.
Four against. Did you vote?
I voted for the recommendation. Can we see again, just to make sure this is 100%? Well,
just for clarity then, who votes in favour of the recommendation as printed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Against the recommendation as printed?
4.
And any abstentions?
1. That's what I got.
Thank you. Okay. Can I thank you, members of the public who attended? Does anyone need any help with getting out? Okay. You want a quick loo break? Yeah. Make it a very short 5 minutes, folks. Application R250883. You know, yeah, that. Okay. And this is solar farm development, including solar arrays. This is a solar farm development, including solar arrays and control buildings, and it's at Lentons Lane, Alderman's Green. Start the presentation.
Good evening, committee. The application in front of us here is R250883 for Lentons Lane Solar Farm in Alderman's Green. Sorry. The application is for solar farm development, including solar arrays, control buildings, associated infrastructure, internal access roads, including landscaping and associated development. The site is for a 40-year period, at which point it would be decommissioned and the site restored. It's been brought to committee because it falls within the definition of major development, as it's over 5 hectares. Over 15 letters of objection have been received, and it's been called to committee by Councillor Heather Timms on Greenbelt grounds. This application is cross-boundary with Coventry City Council, which is the larger western part in the black circle. This part was approved by them this January after their December planning committee. The eastern section is Rugby Borough Council's administrative area. Sorry, I think my voice is a bit loud today. Sorry, I think my throat is a bit dry today. Is that any better? Yeah. So the eastern section is within the Rugby Borough Council's administrative area and is the part that we're considering here at the Planning Committee today. The application is a resubmission of the 2023 application submitted to both councils, where Coventry Committee refused their previous application for 3 refusal reasons. But the Rugby application was deferred at committee and then subsequently withdrawn after Coventry's refusal. Rugby's planning committee previously wanted to defer as they were awaiting Coventry's decision, and they wanted further clarification on ecology, landscaping and agricultural land quality, which will be covered later. Coventry's refusal reasons were inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, unacceptable loss of residential amenity, although they have houses nearer to their site, and significant hardship to tenant farmer, which they feel those were all overcome with the application being approved in their part. Here's an aerial view and showing the aspects surrounding the site. So to the north, you've got the Brookfield farmhouse and farmyard, which is approximately 100 metres away, with the canal in between. We've got the canal to the north as well. You've got the M6 and M69 motorway to the east and south. You've got residential, school and employment in the Coventry administrative area further south of the M6, and the cemetery, the Lentons Lane Cemetery and So Common playing fields to the west. Here are some site photos. The first photo shows a view towards the canal and the Rugby site, standing near the canal bridge. Photo 2 is southwards from the canal bridge also, along the west edge, looking towards the M6 pedestrian bridge. And the third picture is me looking onto the site from the pedestrian bridge. One thing I would point out is the quite significant screening that exists currently. Further pictures look at the eastwards view along the canal with the Rugby site to the right. So that's your top left. View number 1 from canal looking north, looking southwards. That is looking at the site from the canal, so you can see an embankment goes upwards and it's not very well visible. View number 2 from the canal again shows some of the screening there is there. And the view of the land eastwards into the Rugby site from the west edge is the bottom right picture. And the canal is shown in yellow, or the position of it behind those trees. So the proposed development is for a 25 megawatt solar farm. It's been reduced from 30 megawatts as per the previous applications. This will involve 44 ground-mounted solar panels of a maximum 3 metre height and minimum 0.9 metre height. This is also reduced from 60,180 previously. For clarification of what's being considered today, just 17,500 of those are on Rugby Borough Council's side, and the rest are already approved in Coventry. There are 6 inverter containers proposed throughout the site also, with 2 of these on Rugby Borough Council's side. A small-scale control and grid connection building was approved in Coventry side already, and that's not on Rugby side. Internal underground site electrical connections, 4 metre wide access tracks, temporary construction access from Lentons Lane, which would be decommissioned after the construction is completed. That's been approved on Coventry side and doesn't directly affect Rugby. Security fencing no greater than 2 metres in height around solar arrays. Security cameras located at strategic points facing into the site. A temporary construction compound, again just in Coventry side. And localised access and environmental enhancements. There were further improvements in terms of a landscaping buffer of trees and hedgerows on Coventry side due to the close proximity of the solar panels to the houses in Lentons Lane previously, so that's introduced to help that impact there, and so doesn't affect Rugby. And there'll be wildflowers proposed now as well. Here is a full site plan showing both Coventry side and Rugby side. As perhaps alluded to, a significant amount of the equipment is proposed on Coventry side and has already been approved. The key to the left shows some of those aspects, and so moving on to the next slide is the proposed current layout zoomed into for Rugby side. The current proposal is to the bottom left and the previous proposal to the top right. As you can see, the density and the number of panels is reduced due to the improvement in technology and also due to the reduction in overall megawattage proposal. Just for clarity, the full site is 52 hectares across both sides, but Rugby side is 17.57 hectares. Sorry, if I can go back. Sorry, I also meant to mention, just to point out, what we can see proposed on Rugby side is in orange, the proposed internal access track. In light blue further south is the Wayleave line, and the proposed inverter locations are not yet shown but would be secured by detailed conditions. Otherwise, it's the solar panels, as has already been pointed out. In terms of the equipment proposed on Rugby side, it's the solar panels themselves, and there's an illustrative photograph showing that sheep grazing can occur if needed during the lifetime of the development. Other equipment are the inverter containers, of which there would be 2 on Coventry side, and the deer fencing as well, which is 2 metres maximum. The key issues to be considered today to determine the application in planning terms are as shown here, so they will be dealt with in turn. Starting with national energy policy under the principle of development. The thrust of national energy policy was in support of the previous application and has been further strengthened since, in its strong support of renewable energy generation, low carbon technologies, and requires due consideration in decision making. The government declared a climate emergency, setting a statutory target of achieving net zero emissions by 2050, of which renewable forms of electricity generation is an essential element. NPPF paragraph 168 states, when determining planning applications for all forms of renewable and low carbon energy developments and their associated infrastructure, local planning authorities should not require applicants to demonstrate the overall need for renewable or low carbon energy and give significant weight to the benefits associated with renewable and low carbon energy production and the proposal's contribution to a net zero future. EN3 also has been looked at, and while these issues will be looked at as we go through the presentation, the following aspects are found to be acceptable with this proposal in relation to EN3. So it's proximity to an available grid export capacity, it's lower quality agricultural land, mitigation of landscape and visual impacts by appropriate planting, and mitigation for impacts of glint and glare on motorists. Lastly, the UK solar PV strategy identifies the need for large-scale solar farms on greenfield sites. In terms of the renewable energy generation contribution towards local and national carbon reduction targets, Rugby Borough Council did declare a climate change emergency in July 2019 to pledge to take local action to contribute to national carbon neutrality and reduction targets. The scheme will provide significant benefits to renewable energy with a generation of 25 megawatts of renewable energy and an annual carbon saving of 7,080 tonnes of CO2 compared to traditional power generation. It's considered that very substantial positive weight should be accorded to the scale of generation of renewable energy and associated reduction in carbon emissions that this will provide. Moving on to Greenbelt within the principle of development. The proposal does not fall into any exceptions to inappropriate development under NPPF paragraph 154. It's also not considered to be grey belt due to its contribution to Purpose A of the Greenbelt, particularly given its close location to Coventry. Therefore, very special circumstances must exist, but this will be concluded later within the planning balance after the full assessment has taken place. In terms of impact on openness, it's considered limited overall. In terms of spatial and visual, the development would reduce openness by introducing a substantial number of solar panels onto previously undeveloped fields. However, the low nature of the solar panels will ensure that the structures are not dominant on the landscape and will thereby minimise the visual impact on the openness of the greenbelt. The landscape and visual impact is localised to the area within the site and immediate surroundings, and it will not result in any significant impact. This will be further explored in the landscape section supported by the tree officer, but this is views on it from a greenbelt perspective so far. In terms of duration of development and remediability, it has an operational lifespan of 40 years, after which it will be dismantled and the site will be returned to its previous condition for continued agricultural use. Therefore, the harm to openness is moderate due to the temporary and reversible nature and will not lead to a permanent loss of openness in this regard. Lastly, in terms of degree of activity, once the solar farm is in operation, it would result in minimal traffic movements, therefore minimising the impact on openness. Moving on to site selection as part of the principle. A sequential assessment was voluntarily carried out by the applicant following the previous refusal to further support the site. The sequential assessment looked at a 2.5 kilometre radius from the application site. In terms of what the colours represent, red is the application site that we're looking at. Purple shows urban or developed land area. Orange shows historical, leisure and forestry interests. Green is allocated or active planning sites. Blue is existing National Grid substation, Toldish Solar Farm and Hollyford Solar Farms, one of which is existing, one of which is pending with the Nuneaton Bedworth Borough Council. And the hatched areas are discounted sites, and the detail of which is in the sequential assessment itself. The assessment concludes that given the availability of a grid connection and the absence of any suitable viable alternatives in the vicinity of that grid connection, this site is uniquely placed to deliver solar PV. There's no other suitable derelict sites or urban sites that would facilitate a connection to the electricity grid in preference over this site. Concerns have been raised by members of the public about the potential for alternative brownfield or rooftop sites to be used. However, the sequential test notes that large-scale renewable energy development is not generally considered feasible or viable on single roofs or a combination. There are also further issues in terms of size, orientation and scale for such large numbers of panels, and issues around structural loading and maintenance. In terms of site selection, other factors have found the site to be suitable, such as control of the site so that it's deliverable and manageable, as Coventry City Council are the landowner, and the land is not fragmented, but I don't feel the need to go through each of these, but you can see them there. National Grid electricity transmission didn't raise any objections, and the applicant has confirmed the grid connection, which is in Coventry's part. Moving on to agricultural land as part of the principle of development. Agricultural land is classified under the ALC, the Agricultural Land Classification. Grades 1, 2 and 3A are best and most versatile agricultural land. Grades 3B, 4 and 5 are lower quality agricultural land. Questions were raised over what the Rugby site split was under the last committee. So while we knew the overall site split for both sites, I've looked to clarify that here. So for the overall site, 32% of both sides is grade 3A, which is best and most versatile. 37.96 of the Rugby site is considered 3A. In terms of the overall site again, 41.5% is grade 3B, and that is lower quality agricultural. But in Rugby side, it's 62% that is grade 3B. So in conclusion, 68% of the whole site is considered to be lower quality agricultural land, and 62% of the Rugby site is lower quality agricultural land, so over 2/3 in both cases. Natural England have no objections to the proposals and don't believe it would lead to the long-term loss of any best and most versatile agricultural land. As mentioned, sheep grazing can occur in tandem if so desired, and has been successfully adopted for numerous solar schemes. There are benefits to there is a positive influence on food production of such grazing, and that is, not of grazing, but of solar development itself, because it addresses climate change, which is the single biggest threat to food security. It cuts costs, keeping farmers in business, preserves agricultural land and supporting soil recovery, and delivering a variety of ecological enhancements. It's important to note that even though a small proportion of the land is considered best and most versatile agricultural land, at the end of its 40-year lifespan, a condition will be imposed to ensure that the site is properly decommissioned and restored to its former condition. Therefore, given that most of the land is lower quality agricultural and the rest will be restored, it is considered suitable in accordance with SDC 8. So the principle of development is considered acceptable, subject to very special circumstances being weighed within the planning balance at the end of the assessment. Moving on to landscape and visual impact. For clarity, all landscaping will be retained. The site is quite well contained and screened currently, as could be viewed from the photos. The only area where some hedging may be removed is in the Coventry side for Lentons Lane access being created. And a few shrubs may be to allow construction vehicles into the Rugby site, but will be allowed to grow back and be managed after that. The tree and landscape officer raised no objection and held the same comments as the previous application, and have asked for conditions for an arboricultural method statement and tree protection plan to ensure any retained trees and hedgerows are not damaged. They believe that the site is largely contained by the existing topography and surrounding field networks with its existing maturing established tree and hedge cover, which screen the site from the wider area. Therefore, the effect on its character is considered low beyond the site given the existing screening. In terms of glint and glare, a glint and glare assessment was carried out to look at the impact on aviation, dwellings, roads and canal, but it was found that visual impact on all of the receptors was minimal and could be mitigated where needed with planting, which would be secured by condition. The Canal and River Trust also requested a condition to ensure no impact to the towpath. Moving on to ecology. Since the previous application, the 10% mandatory biodiversity net gain has come in nationally and therefore is required from this application. It will be provided subject to conditions and the Section 106 monitoring cost for this to be monitored for 30 years. Ecology have had no objection concerning this, nor concerning other protected species, and have requested conditions for CEMP for proper management. There are no objections from Warwickshire Wildlife Trust or Natural England. Other issues that have been found to be acceptable are design, where the proposals are, the largest element of the proposals are the solar panels themselves, which are limited in scale and design, and final details will be conditioned. Residential amenity, there's no unduly harmful impacts due to the distance of 100 metres to the Brookfield farmhouse and the intervening canal and landscaping, and that's in glint and glare terms as well. In terms of pollution and ground constraints, environmental health have raised no objections subject to conditions. There's also no objections from the Coal Authority, Cadent Gas Assets, Cadent Gas Plant Protection, British Pipeline Agency, or the HSE. Heritage and archaeology, there's indirect less than substantial harm to locally listed buildings in Coventry's administrative area, so not directly by the Rugby site, but it has to be mentioned in the planning balance. Archaeology also were consulted and had no objections subject to conditions for a written scheme of investigation. Flood risk and drainage, there were no objections raised by the local lead flooding authority, subject to conditions for the mitigation measures in the flood risk assessment to be carried out. Highways and parking, there were no objections received from either WCC highways, so county highways, Coventry highways, or national highways. In this respect, Coventry City Council requested that the construction management plan is conditioned, which has been added to the proposed conditions. Other matters, no objections were received from county rights of way. There are no rights of way through the Rugby part of the site, and Warwickshire Police and Fire and Rescue raised no issues. Concerns were raised from residents over other solar farms in the area, but the ones mentioned earlier, Toldish, which is in place, and Hollyhurst, which is pending, if all were brought forward together, it would not exceed 75.65 megawatts overall, and therefore cumulative impacts are considered to be acceptable. And lastly, health impact screening report was provided, and a full report was not considered to be needed. As mentioned in the ecology section, the only section 106 is requested are a monitoring fee for biodiversity for 30 years of £42,935, and then a monitoring fee for the section 106 itself of £622.80. Therefore, coming to the planning balance, the proposals are considered inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, which shouldn't be approved unless in very special circumstances, where Greenbelt and other harms are clearly outweighed by the benefits. The development is acceptable in terms of design, impact on residential community, pollution and ground conditions, heritage, archaeology, flood risk, drainage, access, highways and other matters. In terms of the harms then, to weigh the harms and benefits together, you've got Greenbelt harm due to inappropriateness and impact on purpose A. This is given substantial weight. Loss of some grade 3A agricultural land, BMV, is given moderate weight. Residual impacts on the landscape and visual effects is given moderate weight, although limited. Less than substantial harm to non-designated heritage assets, and while this is outweighed by public benefits, is given significant weight. In terms of the benefits of the proposals, as already set out, significant weight, substantial weight is to be given to the contribution of renewable energy and low carbon technologies. Paragraph 160 of the NPPF recognises also that very special circumstances may include the wider environmental benefits associated with the increased production of energy from renewable sources. So in terms of renewable energy and low carbon development in contribution to net zero, this is given substantial weight, and the substantial ecological net gain is given significant weight. Therefore, looking at the economic, environmental and social benefits, they are considered to clearly outweigh the combined harm to the Greenbelt and the other harms shown. Therefore, very special circumstances necessary to justify the development exist and the application should be approved. Therefore, the recommendation is as shown. Just to clarify, this is the most up-to-date recommendation with the correct formatting since the late items.
Chair, just want to make sure, is the whole farm now gone? Because when we had this came in planning last time, obviously the other side of Coventry, the Coventry side was obviously under discussion, under planning, but now they've approved it. Has the whole is that the whole farm now going to be under solar, or there still be part of farmland left? Because that was one of the questions asked last time we were in this meeting.
So are you just asking to clarify just clarify what you're...
What I was trying to clarify is the Coventry, at the time, it was a Coventry side and Rugby side, okay? So what we've got is a Coventry, and it was a whole farm, okay, that's if I remember that rightly. So if the Coventry side has now been approved, and that's gone, is this so with the Rugby side now, is that including, is that the whole farm gone if we approve this tonight?
I can't clarify the whole scale, the scale of the whole unit, if that's what you mean. Yeah, but obviously both parts make up the same farm.
I think we do need to concentrate on the 17 hectares which are in the borough of Rugby, and I think we should be very careful about dragging in Coventry, which was not determined by this authority.
I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to clarify, is the whole farm now gone? Because obviously it was Coventry City Land farm anyway. And if that has completely gone, that makes a decision from there, in my mind anyway.
Sorry, as I said before, I'm not very good at imagining how big things are. How big is 17 hectares?
I did do a quick calculation earlier, so it's 24.74 football pitches if one football pitch is 0.71 hectares.
Right, so 25 football pitches were being asked.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No worries.
There's reference you made to a heritage asset, which should carry significant weight in our decision. What is it and where is it?
There are two non-designated heritage assets, which are locally listed buildings in the Coventry part of the site, so near to Lenton's Lane, the north side, I believe.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I just come in on that point, just on the significant weight? The NPPF directs us to give significant weight to non-designated heritage assets when less than substantial weight is determined to have that type of harm. So just to add clarity to that element.
Sorry, I think my question is, what are the assets in question?
Yes, just from, as for the officer's presentation, she showed an elevation of the panel, the low side and the high side, but I couldn't read what the dimensions were.
I tried not to say too much, but I have got the dimensions here. So the solar panels, they're 0.9 metres to the lowest point, they're 3 metres at the highest point, and then the solar module itself is 2.38 metres length by 1.3 metres wide and 0.35 metres deep.
It's just the previous application, the low side was at less than 600 mil, so you wouldn't get a sheep underneath it, you see.
Councillor Ian Picker.
Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 5.63, which refers to the sequential assessment, concludes, and I think you said in your presentation that the site's uniquely placed to deliver solar PV. I assume that that is the words of the applicant and not of yourself? Okay. Because I'm always, I'll be honest, I'm always a little bit sceptical when people start throwing around words like uniquely. This is more a question possibly for Richard or our legal advisors, because I have had a look at the sequential test that was carried out, and one of the key things with regard to this particular site seems to be that it's within the control of the applicant. Now, I always understood that planning applications, the land ownership should be disregarded in terms of considering the merits of an application, so I just appreciate some clarification from officers on that one.
Yeah, Councillor Vicky, you are correct.
So 38% is considered best and most versatile land, and I just want to sort of know what calculations have been done for the amount of food which could be produced in the future from that agricultural land. Because if it's 27 football pitches and 38% of that is really good land for food, I just want to know, have any calculations been done about what generation of food there could be for the borough from that land?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, no further technical points. Oh, Councillor Freeman.
Yeah, it's just on glint and glare. You state it's minimal. Can you just give us a picture of how you think that would affect the M6? Because I drive past there quite often, and any additional glare when you're going eastwards is quite disturbing. Yeah, could you clarify whether any of the glint and glare is likely to land on the M6?
Due to the substantial screening, there was considered to be minimal. I can find the reference to it, but that's why, due to the screening. Sorry, just trying to find it in the report. So, a bit more detail in paragraph 620 for road results. It was considered there were a total of 8 road receptors where a high magnitude of impact is predicted and mitigation is required, but mitigation in the form of screening is proposed. And that was a combination of closed board fencing or 3 types of planting options, so new screening, infill screening, and gaps in between existing vegetation and vegetation management. So they were minimal, but subject to screening being able to be implemented.
Now move on to the speakers. We have a Sheila Cooper. Right, Sheila, again, you get 3 minutes and a 30-second warning.
Thank you, Chair. The application remains deeply flawed. New major material noise polluting infrastructure inserted without consultation. 11 house verters become 73 attached to solar arrays vulnerable to damage and theft. Definitive evidence on grid connection and groundworks, connecting energy carrying cabling from source to grid lacks transparency. Impartial decision-making based on material considerations for planning purposes, non-material benefits proffered as inducements seek to buy approval. 43 attached conditions confirm a concept. Approval granted by condition with no definitive design or supporting information is open to change without independent scrutiny. Overwhelming perceptions of bias and predetermination arise from the broad-based lucrative energy partnership with E.ON, fully funding a project where success and profit depend on planning approval. Failure by governance to oversee and scrutinise pecuniary and non-pecuniary conflicts of interest arising from roles as landowner, landlord, commercial energy partner and decision maker to trigger independent risk management protocols leaves both councils in a precarious legal position. In favouring financial interests and profit over impartial decision-making, combined with failures in scrutiny and risk management, compromise and approval vulnerable to legal challenge, leaving both councils jointly liable. Shameful treatment of the tenant farmer continues with no legal evidence on compensation existing. lack of respect for affected residents with basic rights to definitive information on the project impacting health and well-being denied. Cross-boundary decisions where conflicts of interest and maladministration compromise due process. Conscious avoidance and reckless disregard of failures in scrutiny and risk management leave the project open to legal challenge at huge cost to the public purse. Heads of terms agreements 106 directly linked to approval raises pecuniary inducement conflict components to approval, and I'm not sure that council can enter into a contract with itself, but I'm not sure about that. The Warwickshire, Solihull and Coventry Local Access Forum beg Rugby Borough Council to refuse the application. And by the way, there are 3 ancient public rights of way crossing in front of Lenton's Lane, public rights of way. So that was a mistake. It's an entire project.
So now,
one isn't viable without the other.
Looking at the 17 hectares in front of us. I'll pass over to our legal officer to explain.
It's just the application as the chair has explained. Anything additional to that is contrary to this application itself. So, what you've raised today, additional information, is things that would have to be looked into. But for the purposes of today, the material considerations are what's going to be in the application.
I think it will be, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Can I call on Gordon Buchan to speak in support of the application?
Thank you, members, and thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to address you here this evening. The applicant, E.ON, is very grateful to your professional officers for their positive recommendation. Since the project was initially launched in 2023, the design has been significantly amended in response to feedback received. This has included the reduction in the overall development footprint and the enhancement of landscaping in key areas, the details of which will be agreed with your landscape team pursuant to the recommended planning conditions. The design now incorporates significant biodiversity enhancements which meet policy requirements that have emerged recently. Since this committee's previous consideration of the solar farm proposals at the site, a sequential test has considered potential alternative sites in the area. This assessment concludes that given the availability of a grid connection and the absence of suitable or viable alternatives in the area, this site is entirely suited for solar development. There are no suitable derelict or urban sites which would facilitate the same level of electrical generation with a viable grid connection in the area. The project has a grid connection and, if consented, would be able to generate power sufficient for 7,000 homes per year across its 30-year lifespan. All relevant planning policy has been reviewed in detail, along with recent planning determinations by the Secretary of State, Planning Inspectorate and other local authorities. The development is in accordance with all relevant planning tests, and the special needs test has been met as recognised in your officer's report. On completion of the solar operations, the site will be returned to its existing use as required by planning condition. The applicant is grateful for feedback from members of the public and elected members. A number of these items have been reflected in the design and the proposed planning conditions. The applicant is pleased also to commit to a comprehensive community benefit package that includes several firsts for solar development, including a neighbourhood fund for residents closest to the development, offering subsidised energy solutions, a discounted energy fund, energy savings offered for those in the surrounding area to the development, and a community projects fund for wider initiatives that deliver long-term social or environmental value in the community. In the spirit of cooperation, the applicant is also looking at working with the university to review operation and the biodiversity enhancements of the scheme. The application before you is policy compliant, will make a meaningful contribution to clean energy in the area, has been approved by statutory consultees, including National Highways, has been approved by Coventry City Council and will deliver significant environmental benefits and a UK leading benefits package. On behalf of E.ON, I thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Can I now move to the ward member, Councillor Heatherton?
Thank you. This site lies within the green belt. The report confirms the proposal constitutes inappropriate development which is harmful by definition and therefore attracts substantial weight against in the planning balance. It is very clear that the proposal causes harm to the openness of the green belt and conflicts with the purposes of including land within it. These are not minor or technical impacts. They strike at the fundamental objectives of green belt policy and must be afforded significant importance. Members are asked to apply the correct test. As set out in paragraph 153 of the NPPF, very special circumstances will not exist unless the harm to the green belt and any other harm is clearly outweighed by other consideration. This is not an ordinary balance and requires benefits of an exceptional nature. In addition to green belt harm, the proposal results in the loss of agricultural land, including grade 3A best. The report assigns moderate weight to this harm. There is also residual adverse landscape and visual impacts arising from the scale of the development. While mitigation is proposed, the report again confirms that harm remains and attracts moderate weight. Further, the development would cause less than substantial harm to non-designated heritage asset, and while acknowledging the claimed benefit, the harm must still be given significant weight in accordance with paragraph 208 of the NPPF. Turning to benefits, members will note the reliance placed on renewable energy generation. These benefits are recognised and carry significant weight. However, the report also confirms that the applicants are not required to demonstrate need, meaning these benefits are generic, not site-specific. Just because it's big does not outweigh the harm to the greenbelt. Ironic that in the news yesterday, current solar farms could swamp the grid with too much power if it is too sunny this summer. Crucially, the report records contention around whether alternative locations such as rooftop or previously development have been adequately explored. Local evidence demonstrates that such alternatives do exist, i.e. the Meggitt building has solar panels on Anstey Park, which weakens the justification for green belt release. Members are therefore left with a proposal that delivers acknowledged but non-exceptional benefits, which could be achieved elsewhere, set against substantial green belt harm, plus additional agricultural landscape and heritage farm. In my submission, the harms identified are properly weighed. The benefits do not clearly outweigh them, and the strict policy test for very special circumstances is not met. For these reasons, I respectfully urge members to refuse this application. Thank you, Chair. I am aware that I will need...
Just for information for councillors, that the community benefit package was mentioned by the speaker for the application. This is noted within paragraph 14.12 of the report, but it's not a planning material consideration as it can't be secured through the Section 106 agreement.
Members, yeah, I think we're now moving to debate, and really you're this... Do you want to come back on or what? If you don't, I'll carry on with it, to move it into debate. Thank you. Yeah, what I'd like to do is to now move this into debate. And your decision is whether this green belt land meets the special circumstances required in order to be considered for a solar farm. It's no other reason. We're not dealing with Coventry. We're not dealing with the administration in Coventry. We're dealing with Rugby Borough Council's responsibilities to properly assess and determine this application. Thank you. Councillor Sam Edwards.
My view is that it doesn't meet the special circumstances threshold. The there will be considerable harm to the green belt, harm to the openness of the green belt, and there is significant loss of agricultural land. So I would like to move to reject the proposal.
Councillor Edwards has stolen my thunder a little bit. The answer to the question you posed to the committee is no, and it's set out within the officer's report. It is contrary to paragraph 143 and 144 of the MPPF. It doesn't meet the very special circumstances test. It is not the grey belt, whatever that nebulous concept comes to mean in planning terms. And much of the submission from the applicant is not based on material planning considerations, as officers have pointed out. So, for those reasons, I'll second Councillor Edwards' proposal.
Do we have any other speakers?
I'm a bit worried about what one of the speakers said, that we should be thinking about conflicts of interest, maladministration, failures in scrutiny. Is any of that relevant?
I think most of those points refer to the Coventry application and that determination process, but I can assure you that in terms of the Rugby application, all the procedures have been followed on our end, and obviously in terms of the comment on in relation to a Section 106 agreement, etc., Rugby Borough Council is not the applicant for this proposal.
Okay, having disposed of that, the same question comes up. We've declared a climate emergency. We are required to help out with renewables and so on, and yet the same objections come up again and again. You know, do it somewhere else. Don't do it. The green belt trumps everything. Is this really where we want to end up with every single application?
Councillor Gillies.
Well, basically just to highlight the top quality land that could be at risk here. You know, that top quality land can produce much needed food. And we've seen over the last 2 or 3 weeks how the world can suddenly become in conflict where every available acre needs to be used to produce food if things turn turtle. So, you know, for the reasons already stated by the proposer and the seconder, I tend to agree with them.
To the vote? Okay. I have one proposal in front of me from Councillor Sam Edwards, seconded by Councillor Ian Picker. This application fails to meet the special circumstances criteria for the site, and that it is green belt land. Is that a fair summing up, members? Okay. Right, so those in favour of the recommendation to refuse, can you please show? Are you just holding your chin? Okay. I'm just checking. 8 for refusal. Those in favour of approval? Can you please show? Any abstentions? 1, 2, 3. Is that 3 and a bit, or? Oh, that's 3. Yeah. Then the decision is that the application is refused. I'll just give chance for those who are going elsewhere, getting an early meal, to move on before we do the next application. Yeah. Do you want to see if the lady needs any? Application R25/1073, conversion of a residential property to a children's residential care home. If we can now start this one, please.
As stated by the Chair, the application is for 25 Cave Close, Rugby, to be converted from a C3A residential property to a C2 children's residential care home. The application has come to committee due to the application is brought before committee today because it has 15 or more letters of objection and has been called to committee by Councillor Moran in relation to proposed change of use not being compatible with the area and highway safety. Here's an aerial view of the site. It's a 5-bedroom detached dwelling, a residential dwelling located in a residential area to the southwest edge of Cave Close. The site sits on a private drive and an unadopted road within the west section at the end of the cul-de-sac, where there are 3 other dwellings in the close. The nearest adopted highway which Cave Close is connected to is Tristle Way, which is a D road. You can see that further to the south. Some views of the site and the area. So the photo to the left is the main dwelling. It is noted that the area of the road to the front of the left-hand side bay window is to be kept free of obstructions or parking, and parking numbers have been calculated by discounting this area. To the right, you've got 2 photos giving full views of the driveway. While there's a turning area in the driveway, it is a private driveway belonging to Cave Close, and it would be unusual to expect this to be left open for the turning of any other neighbours, and this type of use would be a civil matter. The top 2 photos here show views from the driveway looking into the private drive, and the bottom left shows a view from the private drive looking into the driveway. The proposed development is for a children's home for 3 children maximum, to be staffed 24 hours a day. It would be for the ages of 8 to 17 up until their 18th birthday. Placements could be long or short term, but would be long term. Long term would be preferred where possible, although in planning terms, neither can be guaranteed. Children housed here could have a range of needs, from autism to learning disabilities. The purpose of the home is to serve as residential accommodation for children with specialist care needs for a normal family environment within the community, and it would operate to reflect this for those children. In terms of staffing, the requirements for staffing are 4 daytime members, which involve 3 core staff taking care of the children, and 1 manager between the hours of 10 and 6. This would reduce to 2 nighttime members of staff, where one of those core members would leave at 10 p.m. Changeovers would take place approximately 3 times a week, so with shifts being sort of 2 to 3 days long, and these changeovers would take place at 10 a.m. after the school run. Additional visitors, such as professional social workers and family, would visit the site. The regularity of that social workers is set out in the report. Normal daily routines, including attending school and shopping and other activities, would be put in place for the children. And for clarity, there are no physical changes or alterations proposed to the property. The slide here shows a site plan where it's noted that 5 spaces are available for cars on the drive. Just again to clarify, this may be in tandem, maybe not as shown here. So the car at the front, it's noted that this area should be left open. There is also a double garage to the southern corner of the site with space for 2 cars. In terms of the floor plans of the existing property, it's quite a generous sized property with lounge, kitchen, diner, utility, snug and office at ground floor, as well as WC, and 5 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms at first floor. Similar communal areas would remain at ground floor as proposed, with the conversion of the snug to a games room and the office for a staff office. At first floor, there would be 3 children's bedrooms proposed and 2 overnight staff bedrooms. The key issues to be determined today are principle of development, impact on character of the area, impact on residential amenity, parking and highway safety matters, and other matters. In terms of the principle for development, this is based on local planning policies. So local plan policy GP2 looks for development to be located within the Rugby town urban edge, ideally. So this is considered a sustainable location. Policy H6 says that the council will encourage provision of housing to maximise independence and choice of older people, as well as those members of community with specific housing needs. Local plan policy HS1 says that support will be given to provide homes and developments to meet the needs of older people as well as those with disabilities. Therefore, the principle of development is acceptable as this is what the application seeks to achieve. Further to this, the need for development is while the need is not required, it is further supported by local evidence bases in the HEDNA and the updated housing needs evidence. The HEDNA 22 refers to the needs of both older people and those with disabilities of all ages from 0 to 65 plus. And the updated housing needs evidence shows high demand for children's homes, particularly for those with disabilities or learning difficulties who make up the main proportion of beds. It also notes that conversion of existing C3 properties provide a key source of supply as opposed to new build properties built for purpose. And suitable locations typically include suburban areas with lower crime levels. Moving on to impact upon character of area. In planning terms, this is considered to be acceptable. There are no physical changes or extensions to the property, therefore the street scene would remain unimpacted. The number of children to occupy the development is limited by condition to 3 children and associated adults, which is considered low intensity and could be what is expected from a normal family dwelling of this size. A bit more on that. So it's considered that the number of core occupants and staff at the property at one time would be similar or less than that of a normal family dwelling of this size, with potentially up to 3 to 4 adults and potentially 3 children in the daytime. Furthermore, given the limited changeovers across a given week, being approximately only 3 times a week, and manager and night staff leaving for the evening, this makes the core comings and goings somewhat limited and predictable during a typical week. in terms of the types of comings and goings, there could be professionals and visitors, as have been set out, and it is acknowledged that it couldn't be controlled, but it would be likely spread out. And this would be expected with a normal family dwelling where visitors could attend, whether they are sharing a car or they all drive. So this is part of the potential current use of the site. So it's considered the site would remain residential in character, as it remains a C2 residential use. It's proposed to replicate a normal family environment with normal day-to-day activities. Visitors, as mentioned, would be expected with either use, and no unduly extra levels of waste would be expected from a property housing 3 children. Moving on to impact on residential amenity. It's considered there are no unduly adverse impacts upon that of a normal dwelling. Environmental health raised no objections subject to condition. There are no physical alterations or extensions to the property, meaning there are no physical loss of views or light. There's a generous garden amenity space of 180 square metres, where 80 square metres plus is required. In terms of noise and disturbance, environmental health have requested conditions to manage noise. So there is a noise management plan, and as well as a rear acoustic fence proposed to be secured by condition, and a ventilation scheme so that windows can be closed at sensitive times in order to manage noise internally. Car lighting is considered to be no more than could be currently expected at night time with the current C3 use. And overlooking and privacy are similar to what's possible by normal non-familiar users of the close, such as deliveries, emergency users, and other such things. And obviously, the street must remain open for access and can't be obstructed or closed off. Moving on to parking and highway safety matters, this is considered acceptable in planning terms, where there are no severe highway impacts arising. County highways have raised no objection. In terms of existing and proposed parking, there are considered to be 5 spaces on the driveway, and there would be 2 additional garage spaces if needed. The required parking, as per Appendix 5 of the local plan, shows that there are 5 spaces required. Therefore, the parking requirement is considered met or exceeded with the garages, which would be conditioned to remain for use as parking only. The impact of parking, given that it would be comfortably accommodated within the site, means that there should be no further expected impact on turning and manoeuvring, similar to how the site would be if the driveway was fully if 5 cars were parked on the driveway. Entering and exiting the site and close would also not change in comparison to this, and there are no severe impacts noted to the public adopted highway, Tristle Way. Lastly, other matters. Residents raised concerns about potential further pressure to oversubscribe school places, but it could be reasonably expected for 3 children to occupy that house as in the current C3 use. Therefore, this is considered to bear no change. Another site in Redwood Road has been cited as having similarities with this site. However, it's been noted that the proposal is different in character, which was that it was for 3 families to have short-term placements of 12 weeks on their transition to more permanent accommodation, and there was no cap on the amount of members that could be in that family, as well as insufficient parking, which is not the case here. Adverse air quality levels were mentioned, but environmental health have had no objection to this. Community cohesion is considered could be impacted by residents, but one unit in this area for 3 children wouldn't be expected to cause a major impact on this. And last of all, extra damage to the road has been mentioned, but this would be a civil matter and not a material planning consideration. Therefore, to conclude, the proposals are in accordance with local plan policies GP1, GP2, H6 and HS1. The tilted balance is not engaged, as most of those are up to date. The proposed development would not adversely impact upon character and appearance of the area, neighbouring uses or occupiers, and would not cause highway safety or parking impacts, which are severe. There is a social benefit of the scheme, providing an additional unit for the residential care of children that need a stable home within the community, and no other harms identified. Therefore, the decision should be taken in accordance with the local development plan, and the application should be approved in accordance with the recommendations set out in the main report. Thanks.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you. Is social services or child services or Warwickshire been advised of this plan, and also if they've gone through the design of it to make sure it's going to meet health and safety for the children and people living there?
Thank you. It's not required by the planning process to consult them, and it's outside of planning legislation as to the requirements of a children's home, which would need to be separately met for those purposes.
Can I just do a follow-up question,
That
please?
wouldn't be a material planning consideration.
Why is that? Because the children are going to be, if they're not going to be monitored and the safety is not going to be monitored from a planning point of view, that's quite dangerous, isn't it? And I don't understand the reason why we don't do it. And is this national or is it local? Is it local plan? Sorry asking lots of questions, but I've got an autistic brother and he lives in Kent. I'm sorry I'm digressing a bit, but I see what's going on at the moment. So, and I see where he lives. So for me, I just want to confirm that before we go into discussion, and I will say more when we get to debate.
Just to clarify, the operators set out that it would be governed by Ofsted rules and the clinical commissioning, but that is outside of planning requirements, so it's separate.
Yeah, could we just put up the map again? Because I need to understand. Good. So the public road's Trussell Way, isn't it? That's the nearest one. So how do vehicles get from Trussell Way to number 5 Cave Close?
Sorry. So starting from Trussell Way, straight along here, down Cave Close, left, and then this is where the more private area begins. We go down here and then to the left, and then round to the site.
Okay, and that part of Cave Close is narrower than the other parts of Cave Close, is that correct?
Well, that part is slightly narrower than the rest of Cave Close.
Okay,
Yeah.
I have a second question, if I can be permitted.
Can we?
It is a technical one. It is a technical. 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. that during the day shift you have 1 manager and 3 staff on site, and then during the night shift you have 2 staff on site. But I'm not quite. I don't quite understand when it says that they would be there for 2 or 3 days at a time. Can you clarify what that means?
So a schedule was provided as part of the documents showing that three staff would, for example, start on a Sunday. They would stay there till a Tuesday, and then on the Tuesday there'd be a changeover of the team until Thursday. So that's where I've come to
So
that.
I'm still confused. Does that mean that the night shift staff would still be on site while the day shift staff were on
No,
site?
so 2 of the 3 day shift staff would stay, and only the 3rd member of staff would leave until the following day.
Sleeping shifts. And what provision is in the shift pattern for handovers?
Sorry?
What provision is in the shift pattern for handovers?
For
Between shifts, between day shift and night shift?
So at 10 a.m. they would. So at 10 a.m. the daytime staff would arrive and then leave again at 10.
Right. I'm still a bit confused, right, I must admit.
Our public speakers, Gemma Harrison. Again, you get 3 minutes and then a warning when you're down to your last 30 seconds.
I live next door to the proposal and I am representing 15 neighbour households. The proposed location is on a tranquil private driveway of just 4 houses, facing council woodland with no public right-of-way. The driveway in front of our home forms part of our private property. It has amenity value to us and is where our young children play. Activity levels are exceptionally low. This is what makes it so special to live here. Our objections are first, the proposal relies on squeezing 5 cars into the property's driveway using tandem parking. That layout removes use of the property's turning area for their vehicles, which has been designed into their driveway, and that's what makes it appear large. It is there for safety. If the turning area is used for parking, the property's vehicles cannot enter and exit in a forward direction. When parked like this, vehicles would have to reverse 40 metres along the narrow shared access driveway with a blind bend, no footpath, no street lighting and open frontages. This is fundamentally unsafe in a location regularly used by small children to access their homes. Relying on use of the garages is impractical for this proposal due to site layout. Shift changes would produce intensification that the infrastructure cannot handle with 6 vehicles present at once. We have raised serious safety concerns that have been dismissed without assessment. There has been no swept path analysis, no operational management plan, and no parking management plan to demonstrate that this proposal is safe. Highways have only addressed the nearest main road on Trussell Way, not the private driveway where the risks actually occur. The officer dismisses our safety concerns by comparing the proposal with a theoretical high occupancy scenario of a 5-bedroom home. However, this does not reflect the reality of Cave Close. This proposal conflicts with policy D2, which requires safe, practical and adequate parking, and without proper analysis, the committee cannot be satisfied that access is safe for all users under policy D1. Second, residential amenity. This proposal is for a 24/7 staffed operation with increased noise, disturbance and traffic from an intensity and pattern of use that is not compatible with the established residential character of the driveway. There has been no baseline noise assessment, no noise mitigation plan, and no proper assessment of privacy impacts. The proposal does not protect residential amenity or character under SDC 1. The officer's report states the benefit outweighs the harm, yet the need for this specific location has not been demonstrated. Some 5-bed properties with their own access from a public road may be suitable for an institutional children's home. This is not the case here, where it is not possible to mitigate the impact this operation will have on safety and residential amenity. I respectfully ask the committee to refuse, or if in doubt, to defer and visit the site. It is an unusual site. I don't feel like it's been fully conveyed in the presentation. We're not suggesting the turning circle be kept open for our use. It's for that property, for their vehicles, and they're suggesting they park on it. And also the red car in the photos is the officers. There is no parking at all along there. It's private property. Thank you.
D2 has been considered as it sets out parking requirements in accordance with Appendix 5. So that's how the parking requirements have been calculated as 5 spaces, which is met.
Technical points, sir.
I need some clarification here.
I couldn't hear what you said.
I need some clarification from the officers.
We've got one more speaker and then we're going into debate. call Councillor Moran to put his views as a local ward councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, everybody. I asked this application to be called to the committee for a single reason. Children's residential care is not appropriate for this location. Now, I don't know how everyone is as familiar with the site as per the map, but it is, I'll take Councillor Picker's words, it's very unique, it's very unusual. Having been there many times, the number of opportunities to reverse back 30, 40 yards is quite something. But as has already been discussed, highways has already been dealt with. In the report before you, paragraph 3.3, page 89, states clearly that the placements could be long, medium, or short term. This is a feature of the report. Indeed, paragraphs 3.4 through to 316 discuss the types of intended operating protocols and staffing arrangements that the applicant intends to implement. But again, nothing here is conditioned or guaranteed. The proposal before the committee this evening is for a commercial facility for 10 staff on a rotational basis, plus 3 children that will use the facility at any one time. That to me is not a residential use, and indeed, as defined here as part of the planning application, it does require a change of use. Now, if you've read the officer's report in detail, you'll see that this council has been here before. 22 Redwood Road in Eden Park was mentioned. That was an application for a change of use of a modern 5-bed house, C3, to a family assessment care centre, C2, as we have here. At 22 Redwood Road, the officer's recommendation at the time was a refusal, done on the grounds of various issues relating to character and residential amenity in particular. One of the objectives has highlighted the inconsistency implying planning principles here at Cave Close that were the same as Redwood Road and other refusals across the country. The officer's report acknowledges that there are some similarities between the two applications. However, I would respectfully go further than that. The principle of a change of use, C3 to C2, is the same. The subject properties are both 5-bed residential buildings in new build areas. The suggestion of the inconsistency relates to the type and operation of Redwood Road. But, as I set out at the start of the speech, all of the operational elements of this application are ultimately indicative and in the gift of the applicant. And as I know this committee knows all too well, once a use is established, it does become a whole different ballgame. A residential care facility is a vitally important use and its location needs to be carefully considered. There are many such potentially suitable locations across the borough, but unfortunately Cave Close is not one of them. And for that reason, I ask you each to consider the merits of this application and please vote refusal.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kader, I'll give you first shot here.
Can we go back to that screen where we were talking about moving from Trestleway to the close inside, please? An ambulance coming to the property. I believe, do the ambulance need to back off all the way through the Cove Close or Cave Close to Trestleway?
It may have to, but this would be no different to that of the existing situation.
I believe because we are going to put 5 cars in the place where it is going to be turned. So it has to be backed off, isn't it?
Yeah, they could use the garage, of course.
So just on that question, it would depend if the garage is in use. So the garage is conditioned to be retained for motor vehicles. So there's 2 spaces within that. And if the other 3 spaces are on the drive, there would still be the turning circle that would be available. So it's a possible. Can I ask Could you not speak while we're in debate, please? So an ambulance, if it came to that dwelling, may have to reverse to Trussell Way or to the main element of Cave Close, but it may not have to. So we can't really answer that in full, I'm afraid.
Thank you. Councillor Harrington.
Chair, I still have one more question.
Well, you'll get... Councillor Harrington's been waiting patiently, so let him ask this question.
And I still have an answer to the present question. I still have one more point to add to it.
Well, I'll let you ask another question when Councillor Harrington has had a go.
I have two things.
No, can you wait, please? Councillor Harrington.
Am I on? Can you hear me, people? I've got skin in this game. As I said earlier, my brother is autistic. He lives in Kent. Part of the report I do agree with. There's not enough care facilities in Coventry and Warwickshire. So my brother to go to Warwick down to Kent. I'm really concerned about the design of it and also the safety of the residents and also the safety of the kids or the children living there. Where my brother lives, there's a gate all the way around, and there's a gate with a number you have to put in to get in and get out. Even though they have heavy doors, so they can get in and get out, they still can get past staff because everyone makes mistakes and no one's perfect. None of the bedrooms got en suites, which every one of my brothers has, and there's also a big communal area. And so for me personally, and also hearing, I've been up that road delivering once, and I know that area a bit well, regarding the actual highways as well. So for me, I'm really concerned of the residents' safety, the children's safety, because even social services, which I'm really shocked, are not going to get involved in this because end of the day, having an autistic brother, and I've got an autistic daughter as well, it can be hard work. And sometimes, even if you do the best will in the world, things happen. And I think personally, as I said, there's no gate around it. The fence is obviously going to be left as it is. There's going to be no plans to do any amendments to the property. How can you have disabled people in a property with no development? So I feel very strongly about this because obviously I've got a lot of experience and knowledge of this. And that's why I'm very surprised that we don't have a better designed facility for people with disabilities.
Can we just...
So what I'm going to say is now I'm going to put forward rejection on design because it's absolutely appalling and it doesn't meet anything we can see there on highway safety.
I just want to get your point responded to in terms of disability.
But disability-wise, I'm really concerned.
I think we've said again that it's Ofsted that would be managing the requirements for the design of the site. So it does come outside of planning, that would, in terms of whether there's a fence, etc.
But how can that come outside planning when you said there's going to be no alterations to the property? That's the concerning part. So Ofsted might come in and do it, but we don't know if they're going to do it. So for me personally, we don't know that's going to happen. So the problem is I've got residents who's going to be living around there who don't know what's going to happen. You've got kids there living there who don't know what's going on. So for me, this should have come with the design of all the extra security, also the amenities and facilities and things like that. And I can't support that. Sorry.
Okay. Councillor Picker this time.
So I'm... Oh, sorry. I'll defer to Councillor Carradine.
Just make it up as you go on.
Yeah. Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Right.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Coming back to my previous question of ambulance coming and going out, the whole team is in an assumption that we are only going to have 5 cars used by the employees. What if the parents are there? What if a child has a birthday? How many people are going to come there? So if an emergency occurs on those days, how we are going to monitor or mitigate it? Now the second question I have is, from Trussell Way, we have part of Cave Close, and then after that, I believe that 5 houses, they share a private drive. And who, for example, if there is a pothole, who is going to pay for it? Is it the council or those 4 houses? If that is the situation, then is it not fair to put other 4 houses to pay for a damage caused by a commercial entity?
Thank you for the questions. In terms of the 5 cars, that has taken into account visitors as well. So it would be the staff car parking and then the visitors. That is the total overall 5 in terms of the requirement. So there may be additional deliveries or social care workers, but the 5 as the standard for the people living and working in that, potentially in that dwelling, that does take an element of that into account. In relation to the private drive, it would be the cost of the, is it 4 dwellings along that element. And yes, that would be a civil matter for the 4 dwellings to deal with. That's not a planning matter in terms of the cost of any damages to that private drive.
Councillor Picker.
My question here is, the follow up to that. My question is, are we not imposing a civil issue, which is we are creating it and giving it to the people there?
Yeah, through you, Chair, obviously the dwelling exists as it does, so the private road, it is a civil matter between those parties. Obviously, we have this on a lot of sites across the borough with private accesses, whether that's residential or commercial. So it would be the responsibility of those partners, but it's a civil matter which we can't take into account.
Councillor Picker.
Thank you, Chair. I think we are perhaps straying slightly from the planning matters, because the application is for a change of use from C3 to C2, and whilst I absolutely understand Councillor Harrington's concerns and also have some familial experience, it is outside of the strict planning application that we're considering. The management of the property is outside of what we're considering this evening. So to me, it hinges on the access issues, and I know I've walked down Cave Close a number of times, as I suspect everyone on this committee has. However, if you asked me now what exactly does it look like, what exactly is the layout, I couldn't recall. I have just tried to pull it up on Google Maps, and sadly Street View does not go far enough down there. I think there are some legitimate questions regarding Warwickshire County Council and the social services aspect. So what I'm going to recommend is that we defer this for this evening and we have a site visit to go and have a look at the actual site and the access and egress, because I think that's what this turns on. And I have some sympathy with the applicant in terms of if you had a family with, it's not unusual, 2 adults and 3 adult children, all of whom have a car. That is well outside of the planning system. On the other hand, there is going to be more vehicular movements on a site like this. I don't think what we've got in front of us this evening is sufficient to make a decision. So I'm going to move deferral with a site visit.
Councillor Simpson-Vince.
Yeah, I'll second the site visit, but I'll also add to this that there's the element of essentially what we have here, because Councillor Picker's right, you could have a family move in that have got 3 teenage children and you've got more cars than you know what to do with, and all their friends. Essentially what we've got here is a change of use from a residential to a business at the end of a shared drive. And shared drives are contentious across Rugby at the best of times. But I think a site visit is definitely I feel would be a way to go, to just reassure some committee members and for us to have a proper look and appreciation for the tight access going forward.
So we've got a proposal for a deferment for a site visit. Councillor
Yeah, I think that would probably be the better option, but I'd like to look at the plan that shows the layout of the cars in the drive. Can we do that? It's just that... It's just that I've done work in Trussell Way and in Cave Close. I'm familiar with the layout and the houses. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I was just looking at the scale of those cars, whether or not the scale is right according to the property. But there's obviously going to be a problem because you've got a changeover. You've got another couple of members of staff coming in, haven't you? So you could have 7 cars there.
And what's your point or question, Councillor Gillies?
I'm sorry? That's all I wanted to say, because I want to support deferment.
Like Councillor Harrington, I have had skin in this game, so I used to work in a children's home. And the shift patterns and number of staff look to me as the most optimistic assessment by the applicant that you could possibly have. If any of those children have special or medical needs, all these assumptions about number of staff required to look after them unravel immediately. So if, for example, if one child had special medical needs and required round-the-clock care, the number of cars that would be arriving and leaving that property would increase by a very significant amount. And although it's been argued that it's equivalent to a single family with 2 adults and 3 children there, that's not actually the case. You've got 3 members of 3 separate families living there. And if you've got professionals, family members and the rest of them visiting them regularly, that increases the traffic flows along that very narrow private road. I think this needs further consideration, or we can opt to refuse. But it's certainly in no fit state to be approved as it now stands.
Are members content to go for a vote on deferment? Yes?
Well,
you
I would move for a refusal because I live in a ward and I'm a councillor for a ward similar to Coston, and I know what a shared drive is and how people get problems within each other. And knowingly putting a commercial entity within the residential property, within 2 or 3 years, there will be a civil litigation. And knowingly as a council, we are allowing our people to fight between each other. So in my opinion, this shouldn't be happening. So I move for refusal of this plan.
We've had 2 questions raised, I think need to be clarified. One is, are children's services content with this building, yes or no? And 2, is there a sufficient movement of traffic within that locality? And we can't assess, we will be speculating on those points if we didn't do a site visit.
I think we also ought to refer to the fire service to see whether they can legitimately get round if in an event of a fire with all the cars in that environment. Could it access the site?
Although it's helpful to go on a fact-finding visit, is it not up to the applicant to be a bit clearer on how they're going to operate that and what the effect is on the neighbours? As I've said, we seem to have the most optimistic assessment possible for the running of a 3-bed children's home. You know, the reality is more than likely to be very, very different, and it's up to the applicant to clarify that, not us.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you. It's been an interesting debate, and I've calmed down a little bit since I saw that design. When I go see my brother, there's a massive car park. So there's a car park full of people. We can go in and see him. Okay, so I would still go for refusal. I think there would be a amount of traffic will be going down there. Would be a lot more. It's not designed specifically for what it's supposed to be for. It's designed for people living there at the house. When you're designing for things for people with disabilities, They need more space, open space, they need places to park, they need a fence around it, the things like that. I'm sorry, I see nothing in this design, so that's why I'm going to refuse it on design, but also highway safety-wise, because you've still got a road out there and people can't get there and there's not enough facilities there. So I will stick to my guns. Well, I first it, so you second it, I think. I got in there first, so come on.
Right, so
can I? Yeah.
Go on.
Can I just? Yeah, I had Councillor just for clarification. What I've got on the table before is a recommendation for deferral for a site visit and additional information, which obviously has been talked about, particularly in terms of design, that has been proposed by Councillor Picker and seconded by Councillor Simpson-Vince. But we also have now on before members a recommendation for refusal on the grounds of the design and highway safety, which was put forward by Councillor Carradine but has been seconded by Councillor Harrington. Is that correct? Sorry, otherwise, I had Councillor Deere move refusal, right?
So we should do the vote for
Okay,
refusal.
I wrote Councillor Carradine moved it. But okay, fine. Okay, that's why I'm seeking clarification. So we're all 100% sure.
That's right. We'll do them in all. Those in
deferrals was no. Was refusal. Okay.
Yeah. We know these things, don't we? Right, can we? Right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 for refusal. Those for the application. Yeah, for the officer's recommendation.
No, no one's moved to recommend. No, no one's.
Right.
So that
okay.
Was,
those in favour of deferral.
And those against.
Those against.
That fails.
That was failed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That application was refused.
Yeah.
Right then. Delegated decisions. Noted. Thank you. Advanced notice of site visits. Do we have any?
I have no further ones.
Thank you. Thank you. Motions to excuse the public under section 100 brackets A brackets 4 Local Government Act 1972. All those in favour? Thank you. Oh, you can go now.